Hey guys, have you ever gone into a quick battle and forgot to pick an army, so you end up fighting with a high elf auto-generated army? Well, that's what happened to our good friend Mookip here, and not only is he fighting with an auto-generated high elf army, it's against the Skaven. So, gonna be an interesting one, nonetheless, and let's go ahead and take a look. Big thanks to Mookip for posting this. And yeah, it should be very interesting. Thankfully, this is actually not the worst auto-gen army in the world. We've got a princess up on a horse, a light mage on foot. Unfortunately, because of the auto-gen situation, she does have all the spells as well as Lore of Light attribute, which is useless even against the undead. Lothern Seaguard and archers, couple of swordmasters, yeah, 2 swordmasters. We've also got the Storm Riders, Regiment of Renown, Lothern Seaguard, some spearmen here, Phoenix Guards, Silver Helms, Flamespire Phoenix, and yeah, that's mostly it. The Bolt Thrower, of course. We've got some Clan Rats with shields, Council Guard, 2 Plague Monk Sensor Bearers, the Rattling Guns you can see, and the Sharpshooters there. We've also got IKKIT Zap, IKKIT himself, and 2 Doom Flayers. And yeah, right off the bat, the princess taking the majority of that heat. She is trying to probably lead these Doom Flayers on a wild goose chase and try and catch them out, isolate them. Doom Flayers are incredibly painful to deal with, but their biggest downside is their relatively low leadership. Only base 60 means that they're relatively easy to rout, especially if your opponent is using them kind of as a forward mobile unit. If you can isolate them and hit them with multiple units, you can actually break their leadership pretty quickly. And since they're very hard to kill in melee, that's, generally the best way of dealing with them. You can see here the elves pouring in counterfire on those rattling guns, and they just don't have the health to stand up to the high elf archer fire here. And, despite the volume of fire that they have themselves, they can't suppress all these elves at the same time. Flares being thrown forward to try and deal with these archers, try and disrupt this archer line here. But yeah, it's definitely pretty dangerous to the Sensor Bearers as well, of course. They have very low armor, very expensive units. The Flamespire Phoenix came all the way up and around, managed to avoid getting caught in a Howling Warp Gale. I'm not sure, does IKKIT even have Howling Warp Gale? No, he doesn't, which is a huge mistake, especially against the High Elves. High Elves are one of the most powerful flying factions in the game with a multitude, quite a wide variety flying monsters that are potentially very scary. But yeah, those Swordmasters, the Lothern Seaguard, not doing great. These Swordmasters did get a Foz protection to help buff their melee defense against the Plague Pack here, but they're just in a bad situation. They're getting Warp Lightning, they're getting Brass Orbed, they've got, Council Guard, and the Plague Pack beating on them, so not a good day to be one of those Swordmasters. But overall, the infantry fight is going to be going in favor of the Skaven. Out here on the side, though, this unit of Silver Helms, of course, because Flayers are slightly overpowered, they're beating a unit of, mid-tier heavy cavalry, which you think would be a good counter for them, but it's actually not. However, the Phoenix getting in here can provide fear. Not fear doesn't matter so much. I guess the Flayers don't cause fear, only the Regiment of Renown. But the fear and terror, obviously, and the heavy armor-piercing single-target damage will be quite good against those chariots. Unfortunately, it looks like Sensor Bears, Tail Slashers coming in for support there. And the Tail Slashers, of course, will take almost no damage from the Phoenix because of their fire resistance. But, yeah, Council Guard pushing through. The Doom Flayers are being dealt with pretty well. The princess on her horse is dealing with them, which is, again, one of the better ways of dealing with Doom Flayers. Small single targets. You want something like horse-sized, not infantry because they'll just get knocked around, and also not something big like a dragon or a griffin because the splash attack will hit them multiple times, but a character on a horse usually is the best way. The Lothern Seaguard have also been very efficient. You can see those Sensor Bears did end up getting chased off the Plague Pack there. Those Swordmasters did manage to push through. Very curious. But, yeah, over here, the Council Guard getting caught in the open field by a whole bunch of archers. Not the best situation for them. Granted, balance power still very even. Could be anyone's game at this point, but the terror of the Flamespire Phoenix is going to be a bit of an issue for the Skaven. You can see he's trying to chase off these various expensive regiments of renown. And yeah, pretty narrow Skaven army. I do think that there were some particular glaring weaknesses in the Skaven's army picks. I'll talk a little bit more about those after the game. But even still, despite all of that, and despite being up against an auto-generated High Elf army, you know, it's still very close, still a very close game. So, I mean, credit to Mookip here. He's played with it very well, and honestly, the auto-gen he got wasn't the worst thing in the world. You would think it'd be pretty bad because it's a very narrow auto-gen, and you could potentially just get swamped by bodies with the Skaven. But the Skaven chose to go a different route, chose to go with a very narrow elite army, which I think is one of the big mistakes here. But, yeah, we'll see. At this point, the Skaven player is going to kind of form up here, try and reform his lines a little bit. You can see the volley of high arrows from the princess doing some good damage to IKKIT there. Bolt thrower's also going to stay focused on him. And yeah, these sharpshooters came back from route, but the Phoenix is obviously going to go after them, try and see if it can't terrify them away. And we've also got the princess just kind of trolling around, getting into a good position here. Looks like she was maybe chasing off those Doom Flayers. So the Flayers are pretty much done for. There's one more unit here. Along with IKKIT, the Plague Pack, we've still got this other Sensor Bearer unit is almost completely healthy, which is pretty tough. A relatively expensive unit, but they are kind of glass cannons. They can take a lot of damage very quickly, even to like these non-armor piercing archers. So yeah, we'll see. We're going to fast forward just a little bit here as the Phoenix tries to continue to make sure those sharpshooters don't come back. Eventually, the Skaven player, realizing the predicament, is going to go ahead and attack this main High Elf force here. And we'll see. The Overwatch fire is going to be pretty intense. Looks like the archers are focusing on the flayers, the bolt throwers focusing on IKKIT. But the flayers, I mean, they do only get their armor effect while in melee. This best defense armor effect only goes off in melee, and a very nice use of the overcast net there. Still had a bit of winds of magic in the tank. These archers are getting blown up by magic, but the rest are getting netted, and you can see the Phoenix comes in here, does a ton of damage to IKKIT. He's also getting lit up by all the archers and the bolt throwers as well. So yeah, loss of leadership, of course, for the Skaven will be huge here, especially with the terror of the Phoenix still on the field, and IKKIT actually gets routed off by that massive input of damage. And also the Flamespire Phoenix dealing with these Doom Flayers as well, now putting in some armor-piercing damage against them. The IKKIT probably won't come back, but regardless, the balance power has shifted pretty heavily in the High Elves' favor. I mean, there are still a lot of very scary melee units here. These Doom Flayers managed to survive the engagement with still 3 unit models left. There are still these Sensor Bearers as well, but the Skaven players are very, very blobbed up here. Really needed to get some of these units to come up and around the side and try and go after the Bolt Thrower, but at this point, he's basically just giving the Bolt Thrower a perfect target to fire into. And, yeah, with predictable results, if the Bolt Thrower will actually shoot there we go. Yeah, it's going to be pretty brutal with that scatter shot, just blowing up that blob, and you can see those Sensor Bearers starting to take a lot of damage. The Phoenix coming in for multiple runs here. It looks like, yeah, Death Frenzy from IKKIT Claw, who did manage to come back from route. Probably not going to be enough to save those Sensor Bearers. I mean, they did get the immune to psychology, which did save them from routing, but they're still, you know, wavering anyway. The Princess is still running around the back line, picking off the sharpshooters, and the Phoenix can just come in here. Yeah, the Bolt Thrower can focus fire on IKKIT as well, and that will be army losses. So, wow, well played, Mookip. Not every day you get to see a replay like that. Again, I think there were some serious missteps in the Skaven build, but at the same time, you know, credit to Mookip. Played that pretty much perfectly, managed to keep his Bolt Thrower online and firing at high-value targets. The Flamespire Phoenix was able to pick at some good targets as well. Despite the rough situation those Swordmasters got thrown into, the supporting magic from the Lore of Light there, really making use of pretty much all the spells. I didn't really highlight it, but he was also throwing out some Shem's Burning Gaze. He also threw out, you know, what is it, Baroness Time Warp at one point. So we saw pretty much every spell from the Lore of Light except for Banishment. So really making use of the situation that he, you know, had a very expensive mage with lots of different spells. So might as well make use of that variety, right? Lothern Seaguard doing their part in the late game. You know, that Archer Fire, very key. And yeah, I definitely think the Skaven, the biggest mistake was how narrow this build is. The High Elves are weak against numbers, right? So, and just my experience, you would definitely want to do a few things. First is I would probably cut these Censer Bears, even the Regiment of Renown Censer Bears, just really, in my opinion, are a little bit too squishy for what you can get out of them. Certainly they can have the potential to do a lot of damage, but I just not the biggest fan. I would probably cut both those units of Censer Bears and go a lot wider. So with IKKIT, you'll definitely want to take Howling Warp Gale against the High Elves because they have powerful flying units. It's super cheap to take. There's no reason not to. Storm Demon is another good one, just to be able to shoot at high-value single entities, whether that's, like a Phoenix, whether that's a Lord, even if you need to shoot at a unit of Cav, or even Infantry. It's just a great, multi-use ability. Would definitely recommend. On the vein of numbers, I would say Plague Priest up on a Furnace probably is going to be a good idea with just the summons. I generally cut Plague Rash. It's kind of a crap lore attribute, to be honest. But Pestilent Birth and Vermintide both going to be very useful here. And then I do like the pick of the Council Guard to help protect IKKIT Zap Zap. I think that's probably a pretty good pick. 2 Flares is not a bad idea either. And then you see how this is already just cutting into funds so much. So the Censer Bears, we're not going to even bother with them. The Plague Priest is going to give us access to some numbers, but Skaven Slave Slingers are pretty cost effective, numbers option here, just regular Skaven Slaves even, just to kind of clog up the battlefield and make it hard for your opponent to move around. At this point we don't have a whole lot more funds, so we do want to have a couple slots open for summoning. So let's grab the Tail Slashers. I think they're pretty solid. A couple of Clan Rats, Spears and Shields maybe to help protect against heavy cav. Yeah, we're probably a little bit far on some things, so we could probably come in here and just grab a couple regular Clan Rats as well. This is just going to give you more numbers against the High Elves, and numbers is honestly one of the most important things. They're, again, a faction that's very expensive, and especially like an auto-gen army like that, it's going to be very narrow, so you want to try and outnumber them if you can, and just flood them with bodies. That will allow them to not be able to respond to your high-value units. Like your Doom Flayers will have free reign to just run over whatever infantry they want to. You can summon more units in the back line and just continuously throw bodies at them. Make sure you get full surrounds and everything. Obviously the slaves aren't going to hold up for too long, but you do have this core of Clan Rats here. You've got the Council Guard as well. Lots of tools for dealing damage, and of course IKKIT himself can be a big pain. You may want to try and switch some funds around to get a second Doom Wheel. Maybe cut one of these Flayers. Maybe cut some infantry, make some minor changes, try and get a Doom Wheel, maybe even the Wheels of Doom. But yeah, fun battle. Big thanks to MooKit for submitting. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.